Welcome to your quiet corner of cosmic discovery. I'm here to share something genuinely fascinating about our universe at just the right volume for drifting off. You know what's fascinating? I've been thinking about something as simple as soap, how such a small thing completely changed the way we take care of ourselves. There's something remarkable about learning the science behind how soap works and how we figured out to use it to stay clean, healthy, and feel fresh. I can't wait to share some surprising stories and discoveries about this everyday wonder. Should you find solace in these cosmic lullabies, consider becoming a regular dreamer by subscribing. Share what topics intrigue your curious mind in the comments below. Let's prepare for tonight's journey. Find your most comfortable position, let tension float away from your body, and take 3 slow, peaceful breaths. In the soft hush of evening, as the world settles into a quieter rhythm, let us drift backward through centuries and civilizations, following the trail of bubbles and lather to uncover the winding tale of soap. It may seem a humble thing, a slippery bar resting at the edge of a porcelain basin, or a clear liquid swirling in a pump bottle, but soap is a silent witness to humanity's restless pursuit of purity, health, and transformation. Its story is one of alchemy, belief, and adaptation, spanning ancient riverbanks and glittering city streets, carried in the hands of priests, merchants, healers, and dreamers. Beneath the seemingly simple act of washing lies a tapestry woven with science, superstition, and imagination. Long before the word soap slipped into the common tongue, people sought ways to cleanse themselves of dirt, and more importantly of unseen forces thought to cling to the body and soul. In the cradle of ancient Babylon, over 4,000 years ago, cuneiform tablets record recipes for a curious substance. Ashes of wood or plants combined with rendered animal fats, boiled and cooled, then shaped and stored. This early soap lacked the perfumes and smoothness modern hands expect. It was rough-hewn and sometimes harsh, but it was revolutionary. Its purpose was not only to remove grime, but to launder wool, a crucial step in preparing fibers for weaving, which would clothe the people of empires yet to rise and fall. The Babylonians' discovery was echoed centuries later among the banks of the Nile. In Egypt, where cleanliness was both a physical and spiritual obsession, priests and commoners alike paid homage to purity. Tomb inscriptions and papyrus scrolls reveal the Egyptians' meticulous approach. They bathed daily, anointed their bodies with oils, and used pastes of natron, a naturally occurring salt, lime, and oils to scrub away the desert's dust. The priests, who entered the sacred precincts of the gods, were required to wash not just their bodies, but also their clothing, tools, and even the air around them, in rituals that blurred the line between hygiene and holiness. Soap, in the form familiar to us, found fertile ground in the Mediterranean. The Romans, inheritors of Greek ideals of beauty and virtue, built vast public bathhouses, grand marbled spaces where senators and slaves alike gathered to soak, gossip, and debate. Yet Roman bathing did not at first involve soap. Instead, bathers would slather themselves with olive oil and then scrape it away with curved strigils, carrying with it sweat and dust. Only later, as the empire expanded and mingled with neighboring peoples, did the custom of soap gain ground. Pliny the Elder, in his encyclopedic natural history, mentions sapo, a substance imported from Gaul, crafted by blending animal fat and beechwood ash. This Gallic invention was more than a cleansing agent. It was a status symbol. Soap was expensive, often colored and perfumed, and its frothy lather became associated with luxury. The rich would display it in ornate dishes, boasting of their refinement and their ability to embrace the latest in foreign fashion. Yet for centuries, the common people of Europe would remain wary of soap. Its sharp scent and caustic touch were reminders of the mystery and danger that often accompanied new discoveries. As the centuries turned, the story of soap became entwined with the story of plague and pestilence. In medieval Europe, the Black Death swept through cities like a dark wind, leaving behind a shattered world. Desperate for explanations, people searched for causes in the stars, in the air, in the balance of the body's humours. Bathing, once a cherished habit in the Roman world, came to be viewed with suspicion. The prevailing belief was that water opened the pores, inviting disease to enter. Public bathhouses closed their doors, and the act of washing with water and soap became rare, even dangerous. Yet in the shadows the art of soap-making persisted. In the sun-drenched cities of Castile and Marseille, skilled artisans perfected the craft, creating gentle, fragrant bars from olive oil and alkaline ashes. These soaps, known as Castile and Marseille soaps, were milder than their northern relatives, prized for their creamy lather and delicate scent. They became coveted goods, traded across the Mediterranean and beyond, and their secrets carefully guarded by guilds who passed knowledge from master to apprentice. With the coming of the Enlightenment, a new light shone on the mysteries of cleanliness. Reason and observation replaced superstition, and scientists began to unravel the invisible threads that connected dirt, disease, and health. In the late 18th century, the French chemist Nicolas Leblanc discovered a method to create soda ash from common salt, making the critical ingredient for soap accessible and cheap. Suddenly, soap was no longer the preserve of the wealthy. It became a tool of health and progress, championed by reformers who saw in its lather the promise of a cleaner, safer society. In Victorian England, a land of coal smoke and crowded cities, soap became inseparable from the great social movements of the age. Public health campaigns promoted hand-washing as a defense against cholera and typhoid, and soap makers such as William Lever and Joseph Crossfield built empires on the promise of purity. Their advertisements spoke not only to the body, but to the soul. To be clean was to be virtuous, to be modern, to be worthy. Victorian mothers scrubbed their children's faces and hands, believing that dirt was a sign of poverty, laziness, even moral failing. Soap was both weapon and shield, a bulwark against the chaos lurking just outside the threshold. But soap was never merely a physical substance. It was a symbol, a metaphor, a character in the stories people told themselves about who they were and who they wished to become. The ritual of washing, whether in a marble bathhouse, a wooden tub, or a humble kitchen sink, was an act of transformation, a shedding of the old self. In many cultures, purification rituals involved not just physical washing, but the invocation of spiritual renewal. Baptism, the ceremonial washing away of sin, used water as its agent, but the association with soap's cleansing power was never far from the surface. In the world's great religions, the act of washing has always held a sacred place. In Islam, the ritual of wudu requires believers to wash hands, face and feet before prayer, preparing both body and spirit to stand before the divine. In Judaism, the mikveh, an immersion in living water, marks transitions of great significance: marriage, childbirth, atonement. In Hinduism, bathing in the holy Ganges is believed to purify the soul. Across these traditions, the mechanics of soap and water are elevated to an act of cosmic importance. This reverence for cleanliness echoed through art and literature, shaping the way people imagined themselves and the world. In the 19th century, as scientific understanding of germs deepened, writers began to explore the psychological dimensions of dirt and purity. Charles Dickens in Bleak House describes the endless fog and filth of London as both a physical reality and a metaphor for moral decay. In Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, the protagonist's fevered mind latches onto the idea of washing away guilt, if only the stains could be scrubbed from his hands and soul. The legacy of soap, then, is not only in what it cleans, but in what it represents: the eternal human yearning for renewal, for a second chance, for the possibility of being made whole. As the 20th century dawned, soap's place in popular culture blossomed in unexpected ways. The invention of the radio, and soon after the television, gave rise to a new form of storytelling, the soap opera. So named because early programs were sponsored by soap manufacturers, companies eager to reach the ears and eyes of homemakers. These serialized dramas drew millions into their tangled webs of love, betrayal, and redemption. The term soap opera endures, a gentle reminder of the product that made such flights of imagination possible. Soap's imagery seeped into other corners of culture too. In cinema, the simple act of hand-washing became loaded with meaning. Alfred Hitchcock's films, for instance, often linger on the ritual, using it to signal guilt or anxiety. In the cult classic Fight Club, a bar of pink soap takes on an almost mythical quality. Crafted from the fat of the elite, it becomes a symbol of rebellion, of stripping away the false polish of modern life to reveal something raw and true beneath. Science fiction, always alert to the ways technology changes society, has found in soap a curious muse. In stories of distant futures and alien worlds, the act of cleansing becomes a way to explore what it means to be human. In Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles, the settlers on Mars build new lives, but their rituals, bathing, washing clothes, scrubbing floors, are echoes of an Earth left behind, a reminder of the old world's comforts and constraints. On the starships of Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, advanced sonic showers replace water and soap, yet the fundamental desire for renewal remains unchanged. Even in the imagined utopias and dystopias of tomorrow, the tension between dirt and cleanliness persists. Are we merely scrubbing away the surface, or is there something deeper at stake, a longing to cleanse not just skin but conscience, not merely hands but history itself? Soap in these tales is never just a chemical. It is a promise, a hope, a dream. In the quieter corners of everyday life, soap continues its ancient work. Children delight in bubbles that shimmer with impossible colors, chasing them across sunlit rooms until they burst in gentle puffs. Artists carve intricate sculptures from bars of soap, transforming the mundane into the marvelous. Scientists peer through microscopes at the dancing molecules of fat and lye, unraveling the secrets of emulsification and saponification, marveling that such a simple reaction could yield something so essential. In times of crisis, soap emerges as a hero. During the global pandemics of recent memory, the simple act of hand-washing became a frontline defense, an act both ordinary and heroic. Public health campaigns, echoing those of the Victorian era, reminded the world that the battle against invisible enemies could be fought with nothing more than soap, water, and diligence. In refugee camps and remote villages, bars of soap are precious, life-saving gifts, tokens of resilience in the face of adversity. Yet for all its history and symbolism, soap remains a thing of paradox. It is at once humble and profound, prosaic and poetic, and it invites us to consider the boundaries between outside and inside, between self and other, between what is visible and what is hidden. Each time we lather and rinse, we enact a ritual as old as civilization itself, a ritual that connects us to the countless hands that have come before and to the countless that will follow. The legacy of soap, then, is written not only in the annals of history, but in the quiet moments of daily life. It is the gentle chiding of a parent, the careful preparation for prayer, the restless experiments of alchemists and chemists, the whispered stories of radio dramas, the shimmering arc of a bubble floating on the breeze. It is a story still unfolding, one lather at a time. And so, as the evening deepens and shadows lengthen on the walls, we leave behind the grand halls of history and the glittering stages of popular culture, carrying with us the echo of soap's promise. In the next turning of our journey, we will delve beneath the surface, following the trail of molecules and reactions, seeking to understand what happens when water, fat, and ash come together in a dance as old as memory. For the true magic of soap lies not only in its history, but in its hidden chemistry, a secret waiting to be revealed, drop by drop, bubble by bubble. Beneath the familiar hush of evening, as the world around you grows quiet and the ordinary recedes into shadow, there is comfort in the simplest rituals. Among these, the act of washing, hands, body, dishes, has always seemed so straightforward, so complete in its purpose. Yet, as the water flows and bubbles rise, a silent spectacle unfolds on a stage too small for the naked eye. This is the secret theatre of soap, where molecules leap and swirl in a choreography older than memory and infinitely more elaborate than we ever suspected. Let us peer into this world, shrinking ourselves in imagination to a scale where the very building blocks of matter become vast landscapes. Here, a single droplet of soapy water stretches out like a shimmering plain, an expanse crowded with countless tiny actors. Each soap molecule, so simple in its drawing on a schoolroom chalkboard, reveals its complex character. These are amphiphales, a word whose roots mean both loving, and indeed their dual nature is the heart of their power. Picture a soap molecule as a two-sided coin. On one side you find the hydrophilic head, a small cluster of atoms that thirsts for the company of water. These heads are charged or polar, like the points of a magnet, endlessly drawn to the equally polar molecules of water. On the other side, stretching away like a tail, is the hydrophobic end, a long chain of carbon and hydrogen that shuns water, turning instead toward oils and greases, those stubborn, slick substances that water alone cannot grasp. These twin urges, to embrace water and to flee from it, seem contradictory. Yet, in this tension lies soap's secret. When soap is scattered in water, each molecule must choose. Does it turn its face to the watery world or hide its tail within? The answer, determined by the relentless laws of chemistry and probability, is that they do both, en masse, in exquisite harmony. As the concentration of soap rises in water, you might first imagine the molecules drifting alone, each one jostling with water molecules, their heads outstretched, their tails curling inward away from the cold embrace of H2O. But as more and more soap arrives, a threshold is crossed, the critical micelle concentration, a point of quiet revolution. Suddenly the soap molecules begin to gather, circling their wagons, so to speak. Their hydrophobic tails tucked together, huddling for protection from the watery world, while their hydrophilic heads spread outwards, touching and mingling with the water. From this spontaneous assembly, the micelle is born, a tiny spheroid, its heart a cluster of oil-loving tails, its surface a corona of water-loving heads. Micelles drift by the billions in an ordinary drop of soapy water, invisible but ever present, each one a minuscule sanctuary for grease and dirt that cannot dissolve in water alone. Now let us slow down and watch as a patch of grease, perhaps a smudge of butter lingering on a fingertip, comes into contact with these micelles. Left to itself, the grease would cling stubbornly, defying the water that slides over it. Water, for all its remarkable properties, cannot dissolve oil. Its molecules, bound tightly by hydrogen bonds, exclude the non-polar, slippery chains of fat and oil. But when soap is present, the rules change. As the soapy water laps against the grease, the micelles swarm in. Their hydrophobic tails burrow into the oily mass, wrapping around fragments, embedding themselves like eager explorers. The hydrophilic heads remain in contact with the water, creating a bridge between two worlds that otherwise cannot meet. Gradually the grease is pried loose, surrounded and encapsulated within a cluster of micelles. What was once an unyielding blot now floats free, suspended in the watery solution, ready to be swept away by the gentle current. This is the essence of soap's cleansing power. It does not destroy dirt or oil, nor does it simply wash them away. It persuades them to let go, enfolding them in molecular embrace, making them acceptable guests in the watery domain. The mundane act of washing, so often overlooked, becomes, at this scale, a triumph of chemistry over stubbornness, a victory of order over chaos. But the story does not end with the micelle. Not all dirt is so easily captured, nor all oils so neatly swept away. Some substances cling tightly to surfaces, their bonds strong, their nature complex. Here, soap's role becomes even more intriguing and mysterious. For centuries, soap makers and scientists alike have puzzled over the subtleties of cleaning. Why do some stains resist even the most vigorous scrubbing? Why do certain soaps work wonders on one kind of dirt, but falter with another? The answers lie in the intricate interplay between molecules, surfaces, and water. Consider the surface of human skin, uneven, ridged, alive with natural oils and secretions. Or the fibers of fabric, twisted and tangled, each with its own charge and texture. Soap must navigate this landscape, its molecules aligning and rearranging, sometimes forming structures even more elaborate than micelles, bilayers, vesicles, or even liquid crystals, depending on the concentration, temperature, and presence of other chemicals. At the boundary where water meets skin, a delicate negotiation occurs. Soap molecules jostle for position, some squeezing between water and oil, others anchoring themselves to the surface. The process is not instantaneous, nor entirely predictable. It depends on time, on friction, on the temperature of the water and the nature of the dirt. Sometimes the micelles grow large enough to become visible as tiny droplets, emulsions of oil in water, milky and opaque. Other times the solution remains clear, the dirt dispersed in such fine particles that the eye cannot perceive them. And yet, for all our knowledge, there remain puzzles. The precise details of how soap molecules organize themselves at the boundary of a stain, or how they interact with the complex surfaces of skin, hair, or fabric, are topics of ongoing research. The mathematics that describe these interactions grow dizzyingly complex, involving probabilities and forces that shift with every atom's movement. We know, broadly, that the hydrophobic effect, the tendency of non-polar molecules to cluster together away from water, drives much of soap's action. But the full choreography, the step-by-step dance of molecules as they lift dirt and oil from a surface, often eludes even the most powerful simulations. There are, too, the curious phenomena that emerge at higher concentrations. When soap is dissolved in water beyond the point needed to form simple micelles, the molecules begin to assemble into more elaborate arrangements. Some form elongated rods or lamellae, sheets stacked like the pages of a book. In certain conditions, these structures can bend and curl into hollow tubes, or even close upon themselves to form vesicles, tiny bubbles with walls just a few molecules thick. These arrangements, delicately balanced by the forces of attraction and repulsion, are the subject of fascination for chemists and physicists alike. Such structures are not merely academic curiosities. In the world of biology, similar assemblies of amphiphilic molecules form the membranes of cells, the boundaries of life itself. The same principles that allow soap to cleanse our hands are echoed in the architecture of every living cell, where lipid bilayers enclose and protect, creating islands of order in the tumultuous sea of the body. Thus, the study of soap's molecular dance leads us, by gentle degrees, toward the very origins of biological complexity. Yet, let us return for a moment to the everyday. Picture a bar of soap at rest, its surface cool and dry. The soap itself is a solid crystal, its molecules locked together in a regular array, each one oriented so that its hydrophilic and hydrophobic parts are perfectly aligned with its neighbors. When water touches the surface, some of these molecules are set free, dissolving into the liquid, ready to begin their work. The process is slow and subtle. A bar of soap left in still water will gradually shrink, its substance diffusing into the bath. This slow dissolution is itself a marvel of molecular physics. The solid lattice of soap must yield, molecule by molecule, to the tug of water. The hydrophilic heads are drawn out first, followed by the reluctant tails. As the concentration rises, micelles form, and with them the capacity to cleanse. The process is reversible too. A soapy solution can be evaporated, leaving behind a crystalline residue ready to begin again. There is, in all of this, a kind of poetry, a reminder that even the humblest of substances carries within it a wealth of mystery and beauty. The next time you watch a soap bubble shimmer in the light, consider the layers upon layers of molecules, each aligned with exquisite precision, their hydrophilic heads facing outward, their hydrophobic tails nestled within. The bubble, so fragile and fleeting, is a testament to the power of molecular self-organization, a microcosm of the forces that shape the world. And what of the limits of our understanding? Even now, scientists debate the finer points of how soap interacts with the countless varieties of dirt and surface. The interplay of forces, electrostatic, van der Waals, hydrophobic, is complex, and the presence of other substances, such as salts or proteins, can alter the balance in unexpected ways. Some stains, for instance, are not oils, but pigments bound tightly to fibers, or proteins denatured by heat. In these cases, soap alone may falter, and other agents, enzymes, bleaches, abrasives, are called upon to assist. Yet, for all its apparent simplicity, soap remains one of our most reliable allies in the fight against dirt and disease. Its action is gentle, its power profound. In the campaign against invisible foes, bacteria, viruses, contaminants, the humble soap molecule is a champion, disrupting lipid membranes, dislodging pathogens, and allowing them to be rinsed away. The pandemic years reminded many of us of this ancient silent partnership and the deep science that underpins our daily acts of care. As you drift towards sleep, let your mind linger for a moment on the tiny dramas playing out in every wash basin and bathtub, on every fingertip and fabric. The dance of soap molecules is a story of contradiction and cooperation, of structure and spontaneity, of order arising from chaos. It is a story that links the chemistry of cleansing to the deepest patterns of life, and whose mysteries continue to unfold in laboratories and lather alike. Beyond the molecular ballet, though, lie other questions about the history of soap, the evolution of its manufacture, and the ways in which different cultures have harnessed its powers. How did ancient peoples discover the secret of saponification? What did the first bars of soap look like, and how did they shape the course of civilization? The answers to these questions draw us out of the realm of pure chemistry and into the broad, winding river of human ingenuity. There, among cauldrons and crocks, among the scents of ash and oil, a new dimension of the story beckons, one as rich and layered as the molecules we have just explored. When we left the bustling world of soap at the threshold of human curiosity, its mysteries beckoned scientists, tinkerers, and dreamers alike. To the naked eye, a bar of soap is humble, its surface dull or pearlescent, perhaps etched with a maker's mark. Yet just beneath this ordinary exterior, extraordinary processes unfold, processes that for centuries have teased and challenged human understanding. Tonight we find ourselves in the company of those who sought to unravel these mysteries, guided by the instruments they built, the experiments they devised, and the curious accidents that changed everything. Let us begin in a room lit by the glow of oil lamps, the air thick with the scent of lye and tallow. The year is 1791, and the French Revolution's tumults shake Paris. In the laboratory of Nicolas Leblanc, glassware and crucibles crowd wooden benches. Leblanc, a physician-turned-chemist, is not studying soap itself, but the alkalis essential for its birth. He is tasked with an urgent problem. France, cut off from imported barilla a key source of soda ash, needs a domestic means to produce the sodium carbonate that soap makers crave. Leblanc's experiments lead him to heat salt with sulfuric acid, yielding sodium sulfate, which he then reduces with coal and limestone. Out of his patient manipulations, a new industrial process emerges, one that severs the nation's dependence on foreign barilla and, in its wake, transforms soap-making from a cottage craft to a pillar of industry. Yet even as the world's factories swell with the scent of soap, the true nature of this humble cleanser remains mysterious. What precisely occurs when soap meets grease? Why does the lather leap to life between wet hands? For such answers we must leap forward to the careful hands and sharp eyes of scientists who sought to look beyond what their senses alone could reveal. In the late 19th century, science itself was in the throes of its own revolution, a revolution of the invisible. The microscope, that most patient of instruments, had already opened the world of the small, revealing a universe of cells and fibers. But when it came to soap, to the slick, invisible dance of molecules, the microscope's power faltered. Soap's secrets were smaller still. The work of unraveling soap at the molecular level truly began with the rise of physical chemistry. Enter Wilhelm Ostwald, a German chemist fascinated by the strange behavior of solutions. Ostwald and his contemporaries noticed something peculiar when soap dissolved in water. The solution's properties, its ability to conduct electricity, its surface tension, changed in ways unaccounted for by simple dissolution. Soap, it seemed, was not content to merely disperse. It assembled, it gathered, it formed invisible structures. But what exactly were these structures? Here the trail leads us to the dawn of the 20th century and to the elegant, painstaking experiments of James William McBain. Working in Cambridge in the 1910s, McBain puzzled over why soap solutions, at a certain concentration, suddenly became able to conduct electricity far better than expected. His experiments involved measuring the electrical conductivity of soap solutions, adding soap grain by grain, and watching as the numbers leapt at a threshold. He realized that soap molecules must be assembling into larger aggregates, what he named colloidal ions, known today as micelles. To imagine a micelle, close your eyes and picture a tiny cluster of soap molecules, each shaped like a matchstick. The head of the match, drawn to water, points outward. The tail, made of oil-loving hydrocarbon, tucks inward, away from the watery world. Dozens, even hundreds, of such molecules huddled together, forming a sphere, a fortress against water's embrace. This was an invisible architecture, too small for even the best light microscopes of the day to resolve. But McBain's careful measurements revealed its ghostly presence. He had in essence caught sight of the hidden machinery that gave soap its power. Tools and techniques soon evolved to meet the challenge of these invisible worlds. The development of X-ray diffraction in the early 20th century provided another key. This technique, first pioneered by physicists like Max von Laue and the Braggs, uses the scattering of X-rays by the regular arrangements of atoms to reveal the structure of matter at the atomic scale. When soap films and crystals were subjected to X-rays, the diffraction patterns painted a portrait of order among seeming chaos. Soap molecules, it turned out, could arrange themselves in layers, each layer only a few nanometers thick, like the pages of a vast invisible book. The study of soap films became an art and a science alike. In the 1930s and 1940s, French physicist Yves Rocard and his collaborators devised ingenious devices, delicate frames, wire loops, and even rotating drums to coax soap into precise, shimmering sheets. They observed how these films, stretched across a frame, thinned and shimmered with iridescent colors. These colors, Rocard realized, were not merely decorative. They arose from the interference of light waves, reflecting off the inner and outer surfaces of the film, their thickness varying by fractions of a wavelength. The soap film itself becoming a living laboratory of optics. But soap films were more than beautiful, they were mathematically profound. The mathematician Joseph Plateau, working in the mid-19th century, had already discovered that soap films naturally seek the smallest possible surface area. This quest, what we call the minimization of surface tension, means that soap films trace out minimal surfaces, shapes of exquisite complexity and efficiency. Scientists studying these films learned to predict and explain the forms they saw using the language of calculus and geometry. To probe these phenomena more deeply, researchers developed ever more sensitive tools. The balance, a deceptively simple instrument, became a window into the forces at play. By gently dipping a fine ring or plate into a soap solution and measuring the force required to detach it, scientists like Agnes Pockels and later Irving Langmuir quantified surface tension with astonishing precision. Pockels, working alone in her kitchen in Germany in the late 19th century, devised her own trough and barrier system to measure how the presence of soap and other substances altered the behaviour of water's surface. Her results, sent to Lord Rayleigh in England, laid the foundation for the field of surface science. Langmuir, in the early 20th century, built on Pockels's work and extended it, developing the so-called Langmuir trough. With this device, a scientist could spread a known amount of soap or fatty acid on the surface of water, then compress it with a movable barrier, measuring the pressure exerted by the spreading layer. This allowed Langmuir to deduce the size and orientation of the molecules themselves. He realized that a single layer of soap molecules arranged themselves with their hydrophobic tails pointing skyward, the polar heads anchored in the water below, a revelation that would echo through the fields of chemistry and biology for decades. These discoveries were not confined to the laboratory. In the field, soap's behavior played out in experiments both grand and humble. In the early 20th century, explorers and geologists relied on soap to test water hardness in remote locations, using the clarity and lather of soap solutions as an indicator of dissolved minerals. In the home, the behavior of soap bubbles, how they clustered, how they popped, how they reflected the world in miniature, became a playground for curious minds. Children and scientists alike marveled at the ephemeral domes, sometimes capturing them in photographs, sometimes timing their lifespans with a watch. As the century progressed, new technologies opened further vistas. The electron microscope, with its ability to resolve structures 1,000 times smaller than light itself, revealed the intricacies of soap crystals and dried films. Scientists could now see the regular repeating arrays formed by soap molecules, their symmetry echoing the patterns of snowflakes or salt. With the arrival of nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR, and neutron scattering, it became possible to track the movement of soap molecules in solution, to watch at last the dance that had so long been inferred only from bulk effects. In parallel, physical chemists devised clever experiments to test the cleaning power of soap. In one such study, a carefully weighed piece of greasy wool was washed with a precisely formulated soap solution, then dried and weighed again, the difference a measure of the grease removed. Other experiments involved tracing the fate of dirt particles under the microscope, or using dyes and stains to follow the journey of oil as it was lifted away by the action of micelles. The story of soap's unraveling is also a story of serendipity and surprise. In the 1940s, an accidental discovery at Procter & Gamble's lab led to the birth of floating soap, a bar that could be dropped in the bath and never sink. The secret was air, whipped into the soap mixture during manufacturing, producing tiny bubbles that made the bar less dense than water. Here, an industrial mishap became a marketing marvel, its success rooted in the physical properties that generations of scientists had worked to understand. Modern chemistry, with its lasers and computers, has carried the study of soap into realms undreamed of by LeBlanc or McBain. Researchers now use molecular dynamics simulations to model the behavior of thousands of soap molecules at once, predicting how they will assemble, how they will trap dirt, how they will respond to changes in temperature or pH. High-speed cameras capture the bursting of soap bubbles in exquisite detail, revealing the fleeting lives of these liquid membranes. Yet, for all the sophistication of these tools, some of the most profound insights come from simple, almost childlike observations. The way a soap bubble reflects the world, a swirl of rainbow colors shifting and merging, their patterns dictated by the film's ever-changing thickness, can be explained by the interference of light, but the beauty of the effect transcends explanation. The way soap can smooth the surface of water, calming the chaotic capillary waves and rendering the surface glassy and still, is both a demonstration and a metaphor, a reminder that the smallest actors can wield profound influence. In classrooms and kitchens, the study of soap continues to inspire. Teachers use soap films to demonstrate the principles of geometry, challenging students to construct wireframes and predict the shapes the films will trace. Biologists, too, turn to soap and its kin for clues to the workings of cell membranes, whose structure mirrors that of micelles and bilayers. The same principles that allow soap to clean a plate underlie the formation of the lipid envelopes that encase every living cell. As the tools have grown subtler and the questions more refined, the heart of the matter remains unchanged. How does something so simple, so commonplace, wield such power? The story of soap's study is, in the end, a testament to the power of curiosity, the persistence of careful observation, and the beauty of the invisible worlds that await those who seek them. And so, as the lamps in Leblanc's workshop gutter and fade, as the wires of Pockle's trough and the prisms of Langmuir's surface gleam in the moonlight, we are left with an unfinished tapestry. The tools and trials of centuries have revealed much, but not all. The triumphs of the past are but stepping stones to deeper questions. For beyond the laboratory, beyond the shimmer of soap film and the chime of glassware, lies the world that soap remakes every day. Not just the gleam of a clean dish, but the architecture of life itself. In the next turn of our journey, we will drift from the realm of tools and tests into that of living membranes, of boundaries and beginnings, where the lessons of soap ripple through the fabric of biology and the origins of life. The story, like a soap bubble trembling on the cusp of flight, carries us onward toward the mystery of how simple molecules can build the complexity of life. There is a quiet moment, late at night, when the house is still and the world seems to exhale, its breath carrying the faint, clean scent of soap lingering from the evening's ablutions. In this hush, our minds are free to wander beyond the day's routine gestures, washing hands, scrubbing dishes, lathering in the shower, and to contemplate the deeper significance of this ancient, humble substance that has accompanied our species through the centuries. Soap, in its everyday form, is a triviality, a mere tool of hygiene. Yet when the lights dim and the world grows soft, it reveals itself as a mirror, reflecting not just the dirt we wash away, but the very story of civilization, the evolution of our ideas about purity, health, and the boundaries between self and world. Consider the act of cleansing, the soaping of hands before a meal, the ritual bath before prayer, the careful washing of a newborn child. These gestures are not only practical but ceremonial, a choreography handed down through generations, woven into the fabric of family and society. To cleanse is to cross a threshold, to prepare oneself for participation in the shared life of a community. Soap, the agent of this transformation, is thus more than a chemical. It is a mediator between the physical and the moral, the individual and the collective. For thousands of years, the urge to separate the clean from the unclean has shaped not just habits, but laws, taboos, and myths. In the earliest clay tablets of Mesopotamia, in the scrolls of ancient Egypt, and in the texts of the Hebrew Bible, we find detailed instructions for ritual washing, always linked to the idea of spiritual and social order. The Israelites, for instance, were commanded to wash before entering sacred spaces. The Greeks and Romans built grand baths at the heart of their cities, places where citizens gathered not just to cleanse their bodies, but to debate, to gossip, and to reaffirm their belonging. In these acts, soap became a silent participant in the making of civilization, a witness to the drawing of lines between the wild and the civilized, the sacred and the profane. Why this persistent association between cleanliness and virtue? In part, it is because the visible removal of dirt stands as a metaphor for the invisible purification of character. Cleanliness, as the Victorians so fervently believed, was next to godliness. It was a marker of self-control, discipline, and respectability, a sign that one had mastered the animal instincts and risen above the chaos of nature. To be clean was to be trustworthy, worthy of entry into society's inner circles. Soap, then, became a token not only of hygiene but of aspiration, a symbol of one's place in the great hierarchical order of the world. Yet beneath this moral symbolism there is a deeper, more enigmatic truth. Soap is itself a paradox, a thing that dwells in the boundary between opposites. Its molecules are born of fat and ash, oil and caustic alkali, substances that, in their raw form, might seem unclean or even dangerous. The process that unites them, saponification, is a kind of alchemy, base materials transformed by fire and water into something altogether new, something that can reconcile oil and water, dissolve grime, and leave behind a sense of renewal. There is a mystery here, one that has haunted human thought for millennia. How is it that a simple bar of soap, made from the leavings of the kitchen or the butchery, can render the hands pure and the conscience light? What is it about the tactile sensation of lather, the cool slip of suds between fingers, that seems to wash away more than mere physical dirt? The answer, perhaps, lies as much in the imagination as in the chemistry. Soap is both substance and symbol, a material thing that acts upon the body and a sign that acts upon the mind. This duality is echoed in the stories we tell. In many languages, the word for purification carries both physical and spiritual meanings. In Japanese, the custom of misoji involves ritual washing as a means to cleanse both body and soul. In Hindu practice, the sacred rivers are said to wash away sins as well as sweat. Even in our secular age, the language of clean starts and washing one's hands of guilt persists, a residue of ancient beliefs that lingers in the modern psyche. Soap, then, is not merely an artifact of science and industry, but a vessel for ideas about what it means to be human, to live in relation to others, to draw the boundaries of the self. It is a tool for negotiating the ever-present tension between the individual and the group. When we wash our hands, we enact a private drama, but its meaning is deeply social. We signal our willingness to participate in the shared life of the community, to accept the responsibilities and privileges that come with membership. Historians have long noted that the spread of soap and systematic hygiene practices often heralds a new stage in the development of societies. In the crowded cities of 19th century Europe, the introduction of cheap, mass-produced soap was a turning point in the battle against infectious disease. The great public health campaigns of that era, urging citizens to wash, to bathe, to scour their homes, were not just about killing germs, but about forging a new kind of civic identity. To be clean was to be modern, progressive, and rational. To be dirty was to be backward, a threat to the collective well-being. Yet the story of soap is not only one of triumph and enlightenment. It is also a story of exclusion, of the drawing of boundaries not just between dirt and cleanliness, but between classes, castes, and cultures. In colonial societies, the imposition of European hygiene standards was often used as a tool of domination, a way of marking the colonized as unclean and justifying their subjugation. In our own time, access to soap and clean water remains a fault line of global inequality, a reminder that the promise of cleanliness is not distributed evenly across the world. This, too, is part of soap's mystery. Its power to cleanse and to divide, to include and to exclude. The lather that binds the molecules of oil and water can also bind people together in solidarity or separate them with invisible walls. To reflect on soap, then, is to reflect on the nature of community itself, on the ideals that unite us and the fears that keep us apart. Within the microcosm of the bathroom, the kitchen sink, or the communal washhouse, we glimpse the larger dramas of civilization. The simple act of washing one's hands becomes an allegory for the daily work of maintaining the boundaries of self and society, of negotiating the ever-shifting line between order and chaos. The bar of soap resting quietly in its dish is a token of vigilance, a reminder that purity is not a permanent state, but a process, a continual labor of renewal. And so the question arises, what does it mean to be clean? Is it merely the absence of dirt, or is it something more elusive, a sense of harmony, of fitting rightly into the world? The philosopher Mary Douglas, in her classic work Purity and Danger, argued that dirt is matter out of place, that is, not an intrinsic property, but a judgment about what belongs and what does not. Soap, in this view, is a tool for restoring the proper order of things, for realigning the elements of the self and the world. But it is also a reminder that order is always temporary, always threatened by the encroachment of chaos. Perhaps this is why the rituals of washing are so deeply satisfying, even comforting. They give us a sense of control in a world that is always slipping toward entropy. The act of creating lather, of working up a foam that lifts away the day's residue, is a small assertion of agency, a claim, however fleeting, on the possibility of renewal. In the quiet moments after the water runs clear and the air is scented with the faint trace of lavender or lemon, we feel, for an instant, both restored and connected, to the ancestors who washed with ashes and oil, to the neighbours who share our pipes and drains, to the future generations who will inherit our customs and our cares. Yet, even as we celebrate the power of soap, we are reminded of its limits. No amount of washing can make us invulnerable, either to disease or to misfortune. The boundaries we draw are always porous, the world seeps in, and we leave traces of ourselves wherever we go. In the end, cleanliness is not an absolute, but a negotiation, a balancing act between openness and closure, between the demands of the self and the needs of the community. In this light, the history of soap is not just a chronicle of chemistry and commerce, but a meditation on the fragility and resilience of civilization itself. Each time we lather and rinse, we reenact the oldest of human dramas, the struggle to make a home in a world that is by turns nurturing and hostile, ordered and wild. Soap is our companion in this journey, a humble ally in the ongoing work of making and remaking the world. There is something deeply moving in this recognition. The bar of soap, so easily overlooked, is a witness to our most intimate moments and our grandest aspirations. It is present at the birth of a child, the preparation of a meal, the care of the sick and the dying. It accompanies us through seasons of festivity and mourning, through the cycles of work and rest. It is a thread that links the daily routines of billions, a quiet testament to our shared vulnerability and our shared hope. To ponder soap, then, is to ponder ourselves, our fears and desires, our longing for connection and our need for boundaries, our capacity for renewal and our acceptance of impermanence. The lather that slips through our fingers is a reminder that nothing lasts forever, that cleanliness, like life itself, is a fleeting gift to be cherished and shared. As the night deepens and the world grows quiet once more, Imagine the slow, silent passage of water through pipes and drains, the mingling of suds and microbes, the gradual return of all things to the earth. The work of soap is never done. Its promise is always provisional. Yet, in its ephemeral purity, it offers us a glimpse of something enduring, the possibility of transformation, the beauty of small acts, the mystery of being alive in a world that is, in the end, both endlessly soiled and endlessly capable of renewal. And as you settle into sleep, the last light fading and the air scented with the memory of cleanness, you may feel the gentle weight of this inheritance, a lineage of hands reaching back through time, each one made clean, if only for a moment, by the quiet, mysterious grace of soap. The story does not end here. It continues, unspooling with every dawn, every bath, and every new beginning, as civilization itself is remade in the small, shining rituals of ordinary life. And so, our gentle journey through the shimmering science of soap drifts to a close, like a comet tail fading softly into the hush of space. As you settle into the quiet night, may the simple magic of cleansing carry you into peaceful dreams. Return soon, dear friend, for more stardust-laced mysteries await in our next Dreamtime tale.